The quiet advantage. In a world that never stops speaking, silence has become a stranger. We wake up to notifications, rush through conversations, and fill every second with noisy music, voices, opinions, reactions. Somehow, we've come to believe that being heard is more important than having something worth saying. But what if the real strength lies in staying silent? This isn't about being shy. It's not about disappearing. It's about knowing the difference between noise and value. In today's world, the loudest person often gets the spotlight, but not always the respect. Meanwhile, the quiet ones, the observers, the thinkers, the ones who speak only when it matters, often underestimated. Yet they carry something the world forgets to value: presence. Silence is not empty. It's full of meaning. It is where focus is born, where ideas are shaped, where emotions settle, and wisdom quietly grows. Have you ever been in a room where everyone was speaking, but then one person walked in calm, composed, saying nothing yet everyone noticed them? That's the quiet advantage. It's not charisma in volume, but in stillness. We often associate power with action, but true power doesn't always announce itself. It waits, it watches, it prepares. Think of the ocean before a wave rises, or the mountain holding thousands of years of stillness. Silence isn't passive, it's patient. In a noisy classroom, the student who speaks less may not be the one failing to understand. They might be the one absorbing everything. In a business meeting, the person who doesn't rush to speak might be reading the room, watching body language, understanding motives. And in life, the one who listens more often makes fewer mistakes because they've taken the time to see what others missed. There is something deeply courageous about silence in today's world. It takes strength not to reply to every insult. It takes maturity not to interrupt. It takes wisdom to know that you don't always need to prove yourself. Some people measure their confidence by how often they speak, but real confidence is knowing that you don't have to. Silence protects your energy. It creates space for thinking. It helps you choose your words wisely. And most of all, it teaches you to listen, not just to others, but to yourself. When you stop talking, even for a moment, you begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You begin to notice your feelings, your dreams, your pain, your truth. That's not weakness. That's inner strength. We often say things we don't mean just to fill silence. We agree to things we don't believe, just to avoid the discomfort of stillness. But what if we welcomed that stillness instead? What if we treated silence like a teacher, not an absence? The world might become a little less chaotic. Our relationships might become a little more real. And we, as individuals, might become more centered, more grounded. There's a quote that says, "Silence is the sleep that nourishes wisdom." In other words, silence isn't just rest, it's growth. It's what allows you to step back, reflect, and rise with clarity. That's the quiet advantage. So the next time the world gets loud, and you feel the pressure to speak, to explain, to react, pause. Choose silence. Let it guide you, protect you, and strengthen you from the inside out. You don't need to be the loudest to be powerful. You just need to be present. And sometimes the most powerful presence in the room is the one that says nothing at all. When they doubted her, Mina had always been the quiet one in her circle, while her friends filled the air with conversations, jokes, and updates about their lives. She often sat back, listening, watching, reflecting. They thought she lacked ambition. They were wrong. When Mina first told her classmates she wanted to start her own creative studio, they laughed. "You?" they asked, half joking, half cruel. "You don't even talk that much." One friend patted her shoulder and said, "Maybe focus on something safer. You're too quiet for business." But Mina didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She didn't post motivational quotes online or announce her dreams to the world. She simply got to work. Every morning, before the city woke up, she read books on branding, design, and storytelling. She studied quietly, took online courses, watched interviews of creators she admired. She wrote pages of notes. In the evenings, while others went out or scrolled endlessly through their feeds, she experimented with sketches, logos, voice tones. She failed often, but failed in silence. And in that silence, something powerful began to grow. There were moments she wanted to reply, to say, "You'll see." But she didn't. Her silence wasn't surrender, was strategy. While others wasted their energy seeking approval, Mina conserved hers to build something real. Her focus was invisible, but day by day it shaped a future no one could see coming. A year later, an email popped up in her inbox. A rising, sustainable fashion brand wanted to reimagine their identity. They had seen one of her quiet projects online, and an old friend had shared it. The brand loved the elegance, the simplicity, the clarity. They wanted to hire her. That one project turned into 3, then 5. Soon, Mina's studio had more requests than she could handle. One afternoon, she walked past the same coffee shop where her friends had once doubted her. Some of them were there, laughing, still talking about things they planned to do someday. One of them looked up, surprised. "Mina, I saw your name in that campaign. How did you do it?" She smiled, paused for a second, then said gently, "While you were speaking, I was building." Mina's story isn't rare, it's just rarely told. We often highlight the loud success, the flashy wins, the bold voices. But there's another kind of success, the kind born in silence. The kind that grows slowly, patiently, through focus, consistency, and self-belief. And this kind of success is often the most lasting. When people doubt you, remember, you don't owe them a speech. You owe yourself the chance to prove it to yourself first, to the world second. Let their doubts become your quiet fuel. Let their noise become your background music. Let your silence become your strength. Because silence is not the absence of ambition, it's the presence of intention. So if you're like Mina Somioni, who doesn't always speak first, someone who works behind the scenes, don't let the world rush you into noise. Keep building, keep learning, keep growing. One day, the same people who questioned your silence will be the ones asking for your secret, and all you'll need to say is, "I was just getting ready." The listening skill most never master. When was the last time someone truly listened to you, not just waiting for their turn to speak, but really listening? In a world that moves too fast and speaks too much, listening has become a lost art. But for those who practice it with intention, silence becomes a doorway into human truth. Mina, by nature, was a quiet observer. But what most people didn't realize was that her silence was never empty yet, was filled with attention. She watched how people spoke, the small pauses between their sentences, the way their eyes moved when they were lying, the tension in their shoulders when they were hiding pain. Over time, she developed a kind of emotional fluency, not from talking, but from listening deeply. One day, she was invited to a small team brainstorming session. The room was loud with ideas, each voice trying to be louder than the next. Charts, colors, slogans filled the air. Everyone seemed certain they were right. Mina said nothing. She simply took notes, nodded gently, and asked a quiet question here and there. At the end of the session, the creative director turned to her and said, "You haven't said much. What do you think?" She calmly replied, "Everyone here spoke about what we want the customer to think, but no one spoke about what the customer already feels." The room fell silent. It wasn't just what she said, it was the weight behind it. Because she had listened, she had understood something no one else had even noticed. Listening is not passive. It's not just silence with your mouth shut. It's an active process of receiving, understanding, and feeling another person's truth. It takes discipline to listen without interrupting. It takes empathy to listen without judging. And it takes confidence to listen without needing to insert yourself into every conversation. People reveal themselves when they speak. You hear their fears disguised as jokes. You hear their insecurities hiding behind arrogance. You hear their hopes buried in half-formed dreams. But you can only hear all of that if you're not in a rush to reply. In relationships, this kind of silence builds trust. In business, it builds insight. In learning, it builds wisdom. The person who listens more understands more, and the person who understands more always leads with quiet clarity. For English learners, this kind of listening is more than a skill, it's a superpower. When you stop worrying about your next sentence and start focusing on the flow, the tone, the rhythm of real conversation, you begin to absorb the music of language. You notice the rise and fall in native speakers' voices. You catch the emotion behind the words. And slowly, your own way of speaking becomes richer, more human, more real. Mina used to say, "I don't listen to reply. I listen to understand." That simple mindset helped her build not just a business, but deep connections, lasting partnerships, and quiet respect. So the next time you're in a conversation, try this. Pause. Let the silence breathe. Let people speak without rushing to fill the gap. Listen not just with your ears, but with your full attention. You'll be amazed at what people reveal when they feel truly heard. Because the truth is, in a world full of people who talk, the one who listens becomes unforgettable. The game of presence. There are moments in life when your words matter less than your presence, and there are rooms where silence speaks louder than a speech. Mina learned this not from a book or a course, but from one of the most unexpected lessons of her journey: the art of holding power without saying a word. It happened during her first big investor meeting. Her studio had grown, her reputation was building, and a major creative fund had invited her to pitch for expansion. The room was sleek and modern, filled with people who spoke the language of numbers, projections, and aggressive persuasion. Her competitors wore tailored confidence and rehearsed enthusiasm. They filled the air with pitch decks, buzzwords, promises. Mina watched quietly from her seat near the window. When it was her turn, she walked to the front. No slides, no exaggerated energy, just her and a quiet mind. She stood still for a moment, letting the room settle. Then she spoke slowly, clearly, with purpose. "I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to show you what's real." That was all. Then she paused. A long pause. In that space, every person in the room leaned forward. The silence did something strange. It made them listen. In negotiation, presence is power, and silence, when used with intention, shifts the balance. When you speak too quickly, you reveal your strategy. When you talk too much, you give away your position. But when you hold back, when you breathe, pause, wait, you create tension. Not the kind that pushes people away, but the kind that pulls their attention toward you. It creates uncertainty, and in uncertainty, people respect the one who stays centered. Mina's proposal was modest on paper, but bold in spirit. She wasn't asking for capital just to scale. She was inviting the investors into a visiona, slower, deeper way of building brand identity in a world obsessed with instant gratification. One of the panelists interrupted her midway. "You're asking us to believe in less marketing and more meaning. That sounds like a risk." Mina didn't answer immediately. She smiled, looked him in the eye, held the silence for a few seconds. Then, with calm certainty, she said, "Only if you're investing in noise. But I'm building resonance." That line didn't come from arrogance. It came from knowing. And it landed like a stone in water quiet, but impossible to ignore. The pitch ended. There was no applause, just a heavy, thoughtful silence. Later, one of the investors pulled her aside and said, "You didn't say the most, but somehow you said what mattered." They funded her idea. Presence is not about being loud. It's about being aligned with your values, your message, your energy. People can feel it when your words match your intention. And they can also feel it when you're trying too hard to convince. The truth is, most people don't know how to sit with silence. It makes them uncomfortable, so they fill it. But Mina had learned to live in that space, to trust it. Because when you're comfortable in silence, you make other people listen more carefully. You make them wonder what you're not saying. And that curiosity becomes your influence. For English learners, this principle applies deeply. Many fear speaking because they think every second of silence is a mistake. But silence in speech can be your strength. The pause before a sentence, the moment of breath before a thought, the stillness in your voice, it all creates rhythm, confidence, weight. The greatest communicators aren't just fluent, they're present. And presence is felt, not forced. Mina's ability to speak less, yet say more, wasn't magic. It was practiced presence. She learned to use her silence like punctuation, giving space for meaning, depth, and impact. And in doing so, she mastered something that no amount of speaking could teach: how to make people remember her words long after they left the room. The game of presence isn't about dominating. It's about grounding. It's about walking into a room and letting your energy arrive before your words do. It's about knowing that what you don't say can sometimes speak even louder than what you do. And when you carry silence with confidence, the world doesn't just hear you, they feel you. When the world falls apart, there are moments in life when everything seems to collapse, plans fall through, trust breaks, and the ground beneath your feet no longer feels steady. Mina faced one of those moments far away from home, in a place where her name held no meaning, and her silence became her only shield. It was meant to be a short creative retreat in the mountains of southern Chile, a place known for its quiet beauty and starlit skies. She went there to recharge, to distance herself from the rapid pace of work and thought. But nature, indifferent to our timing, had other plans. On the third night, without warning, a storm swept across the region. Fierce winds snapped trees, roads flooded, electricity vanished. And Mina found herself alone in a small wooden cabin miles from the nearest village. At first, panic crept in the fast, burning kind that claws at your throat and clouds your thinking. She reached for her phone. No signal. She checked the radio. Only static. The walls trembled as the wind howled louder, like something ancient waking from sleep. Her heart raced. Her thoughts scattered. And then something within her remembered. Be still. She closed her eyes and breathed, slow, intentional, steady, not to escape fear, but to walk through it. She knew she couldn't outrun a storm, but she could meet it differently. So she sat by the window and listened not to the noise of the storm, but to herself. The silence inside her didn't cancel the danger outside, but it calmed her hands, slowed her breathing, and brought her back to clarity. That night, she didn't sleep, but she survived. And when morning came and the skies cleared, she stepped outside into a world that had been washed clean. Trees lay broken. Paths were gone. But she stood rooted, unshaken. Silence, she realized, isn't just for the peaceful moments. It's a weapon in crisis. When chaos rises, most people react impulsively, emotionally, desperately. But those who can stay still, who can hear beyond the noise, find a kind of power that no panic can touch. Mina would later say it was the storm that taught her how to trust herself in the dark, not because she had the answers, but because she learned not to fear the quiet in between them. And that silence stayed with her, long after the winds had passed. Because sometimes the world falls apart not to break you, but to show you the strength you carry in silence. Alone, not lonely. When Mina returned from the mountains, something had shifted. The world was still loud. Emails piled up. Messages blinked. Meetings resumed. But inside her, there was a new kind of quiet stillness she didn't want to lose. So she made a choice that confused many people. She took time away, not to travel, not to create, not even to rest, just to be alone. She rented a small studio near the sea. No distractions, no social media, no visitors. Every morning she brewed her tea, sat by the window, and watched the tide rise and fall. At first, it was uncomfortable. The silence was so complete, it echoed. Her mind raced, trying to fill the space-old memories, future worries, unanswered questions. But instead of running from it, she stayed. She listened, and slowly, the noise inside her began to settle. People often fear being alone. They confuse solitude with loneliness, but they are not the same. Loneliness is a hunger for connection. Solitude is the freedom to reconnect with yourself. In that quiet room, Mina met the parts of herself she had long ignored. The girl who once doubted her worth. The woman who feared failure more than she admitted. The artist who still carried unspoken dreams. She didn't judge them. She just listened. In silence, we remember who we are beneath the roles we play. We hear our own voice again, the one that gets drowned by deadlines, opinions, and algorithms. Mina found that voice again. And it was gentle, patient, wise. It didn't shout. It didn't rush. It simply asked, "What truly matters to you?" For language learners, solitude offers something powerful too. Without pressure to perform or impress, you begin to hear the rhythm of words in your own way. You start talking to yourself not out of madness, but out of connection. You whisper new phrases. You reflect in English. You think in English. And slowly, your inner voice expands into another language, not because you're forced to speak, but because you feel safe enough to explore. Mina brought a journal with her. Each day, she wrote reflections, not to post or publish, but just to understand. Some days she wrote in English, practicing new vocabulary to describe emotions she had never tried to name before. And, strangely, the more she wrote, the more clearly she felt not only as a creator, but as a human being. By the end of her quiet retreat, Mina hadn't built a new project, but she had built something more important: clarity. She knew now where she wanted to go, not because someone told her, but because she had taken the time to ask herself and wait patiently for the answer. Alone does not mean broken. Alone does not mean weak. When chosen with purpose, solitude becomes sacred space, a home where you don't have to perform, impress, or explain. A place where healing begins. Growth deepens. And silence becomes not something to escape, but something to return to. Because sometimes, the most powerful relationship you will ever have is the one you build with yourself in silence, in stillness, and in truth. Actions over announcements. In a world where people race to announce their dreams before they've taken a single step, Mina chose the opposite path. She stopped talking about what she would do. She simply began doing it. After her time by the sea, Mina returned to the city, quieter but clearer. She didn't update anyone. She didn't post a comeback. Her silence wasn't secrecy, was focus. She had seen how easily dreams get diluted when shared too soon, how public praise can become a substitute for private progress. So she disappeared from the noise, not out of pride, but out of respect for the work she was about to do. Every day, she poured herself into her craft, early mornings designing, long evenings refining. No one was watching. No one was applauding. But Mina no longer needed that. She had learned something that most people never do. You don't build mastery in the spotlight. You build it in the shadows. Her studio began evolving. The projects she took on became more intentional. The clients she worked with weren't the biggest, but they were the most aligned. She wasn't chasing recognition anymore. She was chasing depth, the kind of work that left her proud even if no one else noticed. And yet, people did notice. Quietly, her name began appearing in conversations, not because she talked about herself, but because others started talking about her. Someone once asked her, "How did you grow so fast?" Mina smiled. "I didn't grow fast. I grew quietly." There's a kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself. It comes from doing the thing day after day, even when no one claps. It comes from becoming excellent, not for applause, but for the love of the craft. Mina's silence became her signature, and her results, when they finally appeared, spoke with a voice louder than any promise could. For learners of English or of anything, it's a reminder that progress doesn't have to be public to be real. You don't have to declare every intention or prove your passion with words. Sometimes, the truest commitment is silent. It's waking up early to read. It's speaking to yourself in a new language while walking home. It's writing your thoughts even when no one will see them. Real growth doesn't crave attention. It grows stronger without it. And when the time comes, when the work finally meets the world, it won't need an introduction. It will carry the weight of every silent hour behind it. Just like Mina, she never shouted about who she was becoming. She simply became it. Because in the end, those who move without noise arrive with presence, and those who let their actions speak never need to raise their voice to be heard. The unspoken language of love. Mina had mastered many things: focus, stillness, presence, but there was one place where silence revealed its deepest power: in her relationships. Not just in the way she spoke to clients or colleagues, but in the way she showed up for the people who mattered. Family, friendship, love. She had once believed that strong communication meant having the right words, saying what needed to be said, offering advice, giving answers. But the more she grew in silence, the more she realized. Some of the most powerful messages are never spoken. She remembered sitting beside her father in the hospital, his hands frail, his voice almost gone. They didn't talk much. There were no long conversations, no dramatic goodbyes. Just quiet momencies, hand resting in hers, their eyes meeting across the room. It was in those moments that she learned something English textbooks never teach. Silence can say, "I'm here. I understand. You don't have to explain." In love, she learned this too. With someone who didn't need her to perform, or impress, or fill the air with words. They could sit for hours, sharing space without sound, and feel closer than she ever had with those who talked constantly. It wasn't because there was nothing to say. It was because there was nothing that needed to be said. The deepest connections in life often grow in silence. A mother holding her child, a friend sitting beside you in grief, a partner who simply listens without trying to fix you. These are the moments that stay not because they were loud, but because they were real. Mina had spent years learning how to speak with impact, but it was through love, through loss, through presence, that she finally understood the heart of it all. Communication isn't about controlling attention, it's about offering yourself fully, without demanding anything in return. For language learners, this truth is powerful too. You may spend hours trying to find the right words, but sometimes your presence, your eyes, your silence will say more than perfect grammar ever could. Real connection isn't built through language alone. It's built through energy, attention, and care. Mina no longer feared silence in conversations. She welcomed it, because she knew that when words fall short, silence remains a space for healing, for understanding, for being seen. She had become fluent not just in English, but in something deeper, the unspoken language of love. And perhaps that's the final lesson. We don't always need to speak to be heard. We don't always need to explain to be understood. Sometimes, the most beautiful truths are whispered in silence, and the strongest bonds are built in stillness. So when you find yourself with someone who needs comfort, don't rush to speak. Sit with them. Stay close. Be still, because in the quiet, you may just say everything they needed to hear. In a world addicted to noise, Mina's story reminds us that silence is not emptiness. It is strength, clarity, and transformation. Through stillness, she built focus. Through solitude, she found her voice. And through listening, she connected deeper than words ever could. Her journey teaches us that we don't need to speak loudly to be powerful or prove ourselves to be worthy. Sometimes, the most important growth happens quietly, when no one is watching. So if you've ever felt overlooked, remember, your silence might be the seed of something extraordinary. If this story moved you, inspired you, or helped you reflect, subscribe to our channel. Your support gives us the strength to keep creating meaningful stories just for you.